All right, everyone, here we go on lesson 8, differentiation in our lesson. So to start us off, I have a quote. It currently still feels like a make work project for the excelling and a charity case for the developing group. Thanks to Brandon for this quote. This was in his, I have permission from Brandon to use this quote, and it was in his lesson reflection. And I did chuckle out loud quite heartily at this because I think it probably epitomizes a lot of you, your frustration with differentiation. So here we are. We're going to go through differentiation and sort of today in this lecture, and then we're going to work on it in our face-to-face time on on Wednesday. Okay, so let's look now at the key elements of differentiated instruction. So the very nature of differentiated instruction means that it will look different in different learning contexts and environments, depending on the student's teacher and or curriculum. In all contexts, however, effective differentiation instruction involves knowing your students. So this is where it's probably trickier right now to do this because you're sort of differentiating for the nebulous student. It will become actually much easier to differentiate when you actually have real life students in front of you and you go, okay, I know that this student has trouble reading really quickly, and so what am I going to do for that student? I know that this student actually always finishes early and actually really does understand what's going on. How am I going to differentiate for them? So knowing your students is the key to differentiating. Makes sense, okay? You have to really understand your curriculum, right? You have to know what you're teaching. You need to provide multiple pathways to learning. That's what we're going to look at specifically, so don't panic. You want to share this responsibility with students. You need to talk to them and say, okay, what do you need? And I think sometimes we don't ask them. We just sort of say, oh, well, I think the child needs this. Just ask them. They kind of know what they need. They say, like, I just can't get it done in the time that you give. So then you have something to work with. Okay. And take a flexible and reflective approach. So maybe you try an enrichment activity and it really bombs. That's okay. Then you go back and you reflect on it and you try to figure out why it bombed. Or maybe it worked really well and you try to figure out why it worked really well. Okay, I would suggest, I'm not going to stop right now, but at some point, this Alberta Education Making a Difference PDF, the PDF is like 300 pages long total. Don't panic, but it's an excellent resource. And I would again be sure that this goes on your ePortfolio. If you are interested in kind of getting an overview of differentiation, read pages 1 to 11, and it'll help you have a bit of an overview of that. Okay, there are, as I said, back on this slide, I was going to go through multiple pathways to learning. Let's have a look at that specifically. So basically, you want to differentiate the following for the spectrum of students in your class. So I think this is where you are getting caught in your lesson planning, is you are often just trying to differentiate one aspect. But you want to be differentiating, thinking about content, process, products, and learning environment. So let's look at each one of these. Content. So actually, you know what? I'm going to suggest that instead of me reading these out to you, is you just go to this Reading Rockets article that I have at the bottom of the page, and you just have a look through, because they have some really great examples of what these different aspects of differentiation look like. So go to the Reading Rockets article, have a read through that, and come back. It'll probably take you about 2 minutes. Okay, hopefully that article gave you a little bit of an idea into that it's not always just about one aspect of differentiation, but it's dependent on what the student's needs and what you're doing in the classroom. Okay, let's now take a look at this question. If I'm supposed to differentiate those aspects, how do I do it? That's you're like, okay, I get it. I get the academic idea. How do I actually do it? Okay, let's jump into that. First of all, you need to use your Alberta Program of Studies to write your outcomes with the range of Bloom's verbs and be specific in how you will know if students are reaching that outcome. So you know that part where I probably circled be specific on your lesson plans? This is why, because if you don't know what you are teaching them or what you want them to learn, then you have the added on aspect of you're trying to differentiate when you don't even really know what you're teaching them. It gets crazy, right? So you have to be, this is the key, and that's why we harp on you understanding that little section of the lesson plan. How will I know they've achieved the learning outcomes? That's where you have to be super specific, because then that's what you use to differentiate. If it's too general, students will understand you don't have hope to differentiate because you're not specific enough. Okay, second point, think about what will help each student learn these outcomes. Okay, so you want to choose overall instruction for the whole class for that achieving to promote maximum student achievement in all students. So again, it goes back to just really planning your lesson well and really think about what can I do that is going to be the most efficient and amazing way to teach this to all of my students. Okay, then once you have, where's my little pencil here? I haven't used my pencil yet. Once you have these guys, then you can start to think about how to enrich and how to begin. If you don't have those first two, it's going to be really tricky. And then, so then you go, but still, what does this look like in my lesson plan differentiation section? So let's have a look. Okay, the little sad guy. So if you are writing this in your lesson plan, you probably want to have this little guy's face in your mind's eye, because you probably, if you see this in your lesson plan, you don't want to have that in your lesson. So if you writing the differentiation section of your lesson plan, the beginning and developing will just partner up with an excelling student or an EA, or they'll just write fewer sentences or words. Not really differentiation. Or you're excelling and enriching. Work with the beginning student, do another worksheet or paragraph at the same level that he or she already understands, share more with the class during class discussion, color or illustrate, catch up on work, or write extra sentences with more words. Again, not really differentiation, it's busy work. It's busy work. And if you go, wow, that's what I wrote in my lesson plan, it's okay, because that was your kind of first go with differentiation. We kind of want you to jump in and feel the heat of trying to differentiate, because then I think this lecture makes so much more sense than doing it before. So that's why it is in the chronological order that it is. Okay, so I saw lots of this, and I made comments on it in your lesson plan. Again, it's a good first step, but now we're going to take you a little bit farther. Okay. Extending or enriching, let's start with these guys. So again, if you want more information, go to chapter 10 of this document. It's a really great resource. So I think this is the key you have to get your head around. You need to create the learning opportunity to be abstract, complex, and interrelated right from the start, so that it does not become simply a more situation. So this is on page 180 of this particular resource. Differentiated instruction for students who are gifted means enhanced opportunities for thinking and learning, not just more work to do. Okay, let's go through some of these ideas. So what you want to do is, I think what happens is you do your learning outcomes, your learning opportunities, which actually were really well done. Congrats as a class for doing a really great job of the learning opportunities. But we focus on those learning opportunities, and then we add on. What you want to think about is, how can you, right from the start, how can you plan ahead so that the kids who need enrichment and extension get that right from the start, so they don't do the worksheet that everybody else has done, and then you say, okay, write 3 more sentences. Because what kid wants to just write 3 more sentences? If they get the worksheet that is already abstract, complex, and interrelated at the same time that everybody else gets this worksheet, then it's not a more situation. It's they're just doing it. And kids are amazingly understanding of differentiation. Just think back to your own schooling days. Did you kind of know where you were in the class cognitively? Who were the smart kids? Who were the kids that needed help? Who were the kids that just kind of cruise through the middle? They kind of all know. They seem to be okay with differentiation, but they're not okay with not being fair and consistent. And it seems like an oxymoron, but that's the way it is. So if you give a child who you know needs some extension, if you give them some work or a learning opportunity that's already at their level when you first give it to them, and you give everybody else something that's here or here when we start beginning, then it doesn't become an add-on, it just becomes the opportunity. So this idea of right from the start is important. That's super important. Okay. Learning opportunities that are abstract. I'm going to just read a little bit of this. So, abstract content focuses less on specific factual information and more on concepts and generalizations. Building on abstraction means encouraging students to consider ideas in general terms and to move more fluidly between facts and broad understandings. Okay, so they take what you're doing and they broaden it out. Complex. This means that content can be made more complex by introducing additional variables. So, for example, a basic learning activity of surveying the class to find out how many students come to school by walking or car could be made more complex by asking students to gather different information in a survey and use this to compare distance from school with various modes of transport. So they don't do the initial survey, because you can explain the concept of the initial survey quickly to them, and then they do something where they're gathering different information. So they don't just go through the survey and do that, and then you say, okay, now add on to that, because again, it's not, the kid doesn't want to do that. You give them the more abstract, or sorry, the more complex problem right off the top from the get-go. Okay, interrelated. Students who are gifted often spot the potential for applying ideas or methods from one field of study to others. So, for example, students could take science knowledge about weather and climate and use it in a social studies inquiry about how people adapt to their environment. So again, right from the top, you would say, okay, I want you to bring in science and social aspects, boom, go. And then it's not an add-on once they've already done the worksheet or whatever they've done. Okay, makes sense? Off we go. So again, this section needs to be planned ahead by you. So you are thinking, okay, I have this assignment. I know what I want. I know what my learning outcomes for my achieving kids are. Now, how can I plan for those enriching kids so that they get something that will be challenging for them right off the bat? So that's why it's not just a observe the kids or get them once they're done to go and work with a beginning or developing student. This is what you plan ahead of time. So you might do something like a tiered assessment. Sorry, let me just get going here. Sorry, I'm way behind on my slides over here. Okay, a tiered assessment where you have parallel tasks that are at varied levels of complexity and depth and abstractness. So again, you would give a beginning student one assignment, an achieving one assignment, and an enriching. And they don't have to be completely different assignments. They just have to be, grow in complexity towards those enriching kids. You could, in class as a whole, use more open-ended questions so that there are some very, what color is the red wagon type questions very recall questions, up to that creative, that synthesis, those analysis type questions. Okay. You can also use independent projects. Again, where the extending or enriching child is not doing more, they're just doing the assignment. And usually those kids are really happy to be challenged. Usually they're bored in class, so you don't want them to be bored. You want them to be challenged, so you maybe do some independent projects. Okay. Oh, sorry, under tiered assignment here, let's have a look at this. I took this off of this chapter 10. So tier 1 is describe an ant community in pictures or words. And this is tier 2, describe an ant community using at least 3 sentences with at least 3 describing words in each sentence. Now you might be saying, hey, but that's what I said, just do more sentences, add more words, and you said no on your lesson plan. That's because the kid already had to do this in tier 1. So this would be, you would give this to your beginning, developing, possibly achieving students, and then this tier 2 would go directly. And so then they start here. They don't do this and then add in. Does that hopefully that makes sense then. I use this one particularly because I was like, I need to address that it's okay for the students to do more, but they have to do that right off the top. Okay, cluster groups of other children at same level. So again, you can sometimes bring those kids who need enrichment together in small groups. Other times you want them mixed. Increase access to diverse materials and resources. So say you're doing an independent project and they're doing a research project on waste in our world. Say, well, you send those kids to different websites than you do to your beginning or your achieving. You send them to one that maybe is, the reading level is a little bit higher, or the concepts are a little bit more abstract. So that's again where you know those kids and you send them there. And you get them to do some self-assessment. Was this challenging? No. Then you say, what would make it more challenging? Well, if I did this, and this is a little bit going back to that, ask the kids in there. Okay. And again, it's just not more stuff in there. Okay, let's look at our beginning and developing students. So it's the same concept. How can you create the learning opportunity to be cognitively appropriate right from the start? So as in Brandon's words, it does not just become a charity case situation. Oh, you just have to do one word. Oh, you just draw something, right? The kid will soon learn, oh, the teacher doesn't actually believe that I can do anything. And then you've got issues. Okay, so again, you can do some small group work or one-on-one time where you pull those kids. This is like that guided reading and writing time where you pull those kids together and you work specifically on things that you know that they need. This group, beginning and developing, probably is the group that needs that small group one-on-one time the most. Okay, you also can put them in flexible groupings, so you can mix them up. So you maybe have a beginning, achieving, and an excelling kid all in a group, and make those groups where the beginning student is actually the pro. So say you have a beginning student that knows a ton about dinosaurs. We'll do a dinosaur group and have them teach the enriching kid, because they never get to kind of be that person. So again, flexible grouping in there. Independent learning activity, again, starting to see how these things, you can do them with your class, but then just make it happen for these diverse level, cognitive level of kids. Again, in an independent learning activity, they just have a little bit more time to be working on things that they need to work on. Let them use some technology. Again, maybe there's books that are read for them. Maybe there's translations if you have ELL students. There are lots of educational sites with like pop-ups to explain things in a different way. Maybe you could record some stuff so that when they go home, they can take you home with them and then hear your voice again. So again, use technology. Give explicit instructions, and again, maybe you want to have it on a sheet for these beginning. Number 1, number 2, number 3, because oftentimes they get distracted and then they get lost and they don't know what they're doing. Scaffolding supports. Again, this comes from the planning right from the start, right? So you know that there's a certain topic coming up, and you know that one of your kids really needs a graphic organizer. Well, then you bring the graphic organizer in. So maybe you help them scaffold. So you bring a graphic organizer. You bring in some memory prompts. Okay, these were the three. This is the story arc. So then you have the picture of the story arc for them as a memory prompt. You maybe have a list of things. These are the parts of the paragraph that I need you to be concentrating on. You have some kind of color code key. Like I want you to be checking your spelling. Look for orange. I want you to be checking your vocab, those kind of things. And any kind of an outline. Oh, outline components. You want to outline the components that are essential to the assignment. Okay. Think about bringing in songs and movement. Again, these don't necessarily just have to be for the beginning students. But they definitely, you could do them with the whole class, but they definitely will help with the beginning students. So if you say, I sang a song and I did all these movements to help them remember the multiplication table, whatever you did, you can use that as your differentiation for your beginning students because you did it. It's fun for the enriching and the extending students. They don't necessarily need it for understanding. It's fun, but the beginning need it. And place in the class. So this is like physical placement. I should have put physical placement there. This is, does the child need to be right close to you? Do they need to be far away from you? Do they need to have a little space that they can go to unwind? Do they need a physical thing like an exercise ball or a fidget toy? I know those were big. I don't think they're quite as big anymore, but maybe there's a child that fidget toy will just keep them focused. Okay. When you are looking at your beginning developing, generally we're looking kind of like here, for these particular kids. This intensive look is not kind of where we're aiming, but this tier 2 is where we're aiming for these kids. Okay. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea. These now, I'm not going to read all these to you. I will leave these for you to read. But again, these are some ideas more for kids with disabilities, but they kind of work for your really beginning students. So have a look through these and start to think about, oh, I could have done that in my lesson plan, or I could have incorporated this particular concept. Okay. What you're going to do now in our collaborate time is I want you to actually go to this document. I want you to go to specifically page 195 to 212, sorry. And these are ELA specific ways to differentiate. I want you to look through those pages. They go pretty fast. And I want you to pull ideas out that you're like, oh, that's super cool. And I want you to share with your colleagues these ELA strategies for differentiation. What we're going to do in our face-to-face time is we're going to then look specifically at your lesson 3 from assignment 3, look at your outcomes, and then look at how you could differentiate your learning opportunities. There we go. That's the word. Okay. But for collaborate, have a look through these pages and pull out some ideas. Okay. This is more just, I threw these in here because I think it's important. These are kind of a little bit more optional for you to have a look at. Some of you will go out into practicums where they talk about RTI, and I wanted you to know what that was. It's a response to intervention approach, and it's built on a premise that most students will survive with proper support. It's a very flexible model, and it ascertains which students need the most support. So it's similar to looking back here. It tries to figure out who are those kids that need intensive support. Okay, so if you are in a school that uses RTI and you're like, I actually don't know what that means, have a look at this video. It's again a good introductory video, and you should know. You should kind of know what this is out there. Okay. Also, you might be out in schools where they're using collaborative response model. And this is an Alberta-born framework. And actually, when I was poking around looking at this, it was actually developed by one of my University of Alberta professors. So that was kind of cool for me to see what he has done. And again, have a look at the video, have a look at some overall information if you know that your school is using collaborative response model, because again, you want to go in there knowing what CRM means when they're talking about that in the staff room. And also, if you have never looked at an IPP, I would go to, again, this is an Alberta Education IPP overview document. I would go specifically to pages 21 to 41. They are exemplars in there, so you can kind of see, because we talk about these, but we never really kind of go through them. But have a look at it. It's kind of interesting for you to know what's on an IPP. And again, this is a great document to have on your ePortfolio for future, because you will at some point be developing or be part of a team that develops IPPs. Okay, woohoo! So one last. This is when I talked to Medicine Hat teachers about what they wanted me to be sure to cover in this class, and these were some of the responses that I got. I think the most important understanding is the huge need for differentiation or multi-tiered approach to literacy. All classrooms have such a massive spread that the single approach will at most make your teachers fail and feel frustrated not knowing where to begin. For instance, my grade 2 class has a spread from pre-K skills to grade 7. How do I teach all of them? How do I ensure everyone's needs are met and not just teaching the math? And my grade 5 class has a spread from grade 2 to grade 11. How do I ensure all cross-curricular information is being absorbed, and how do I ensure they are all being pushed? These are legit questions. These are your Medicine Hat teacher colleagues. And the final one I quite like as a bit of a summation. I also believe they need to know that there is not one way to do things. No boxed program actually exists. Too bad. That literacy takes a lot of time, intention, and endurance to make a difference so students can succeed. Awesome work. We are going to have a romp through all of this in Collaborate and in our face-to-face. Hopefully this gives you some good fodder for discussion, and we will see you soon. Take care.